With Ikoria, Lair, Behemoths just around the corner, everyone will be on the hunt for the rare and expensive cards such as Kinnan and Fiend Artisan, but there's more to Ikoria than meets the eye. While obviously most of the rare and mythics are going to be great and instantly added to a bunch of decks, the commons and uncommons in the set, despite being cheaper and easier to attain, are nothing to scoff at. Today I'll be looking at some of my personal picks for the best commons and uncommons appearing in the new Ikoria, Lair and Behemoths set. Starting with my favourite magic colour, green has some fantastic cards to help with ramp, removal and of course big green stompy things. Firstly, we start off with an amazing early game play that if not dealt with can lead to some nasty situations for your opponent. This is of course the Almighty Brush Wag. Almighty Brush Wag is a 1/1 Brush Wag costing a single green mana. It has trample and for 3 and a green it gets +3/+3 until end of turn. It's a new card for Ikoria and I'm already running this in my mono green decks thanks to its cheap cost and ability to self boost. It's normally not the target of removal spells due to its normal small stature, and because of this it can end games if opponents forget about your simple 1/1 and plethora of mana. Next up is a card originally printed in Dominaria and since reprinted for the mystery boosters, that being Adventurous Impulse. This sorcery costs a single green and allows you to look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or land from among them, put it in your hand, and the rest go to the bottom of your library. I like this card as it's not just good for early game ramp, but can help you filter through cards later in the game as it allows you to select a creature instead of the mana, and for the cost of a single mana it's worth having in the deck. Speaking of creatures, the next one is a new Ikoria focused creature and a must have in any mutate deck, Essence Symbiote. It's a 2/2 beast for 1 and a green. Whenever a creature you control mutates, put a 1/1 counter on it and you gain 2 life. So for every mutate you do while this is on the battlefield, it gets an extra 1/1 counter on top of any that it already may create, and you get a small life gain. As it's a beast, it can be mutated upon, so its effect can also apply it to itself. Another must-have for mutate decks is the new Migratory Greathorn. It's a 3/4 beast costing 3 and a green with mutate cost of 2 and a green. Its ability is whenever it mutates, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped and shuffle your library. This is already one of the most popular commons I've seen on Arena recently, even in non-mutate decks thanks to its easy mana ramp ability. Probably one of my favourite cards from Ikoria, including the rares, is Ram Through. It costs 1 and a green for an instant, with which a target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to a target creature you don't control. If it has trample, excess damage is dealt to the creature's controller. For the same price as Rabid Bite, it does the same thing, but with trample going over. This is pretty good in pretty much any green deck, but works especially amazing with cards such as Colossification. Another great value card is the Sorcery Survivor's Bond. For 1 and a green, you get to return a target human creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and or a non-human creature. So you can get up to 2 creatures from your graveyard to your hand for 2 mana, which is very good value. Finally, for the green commons is another new card for Ikoria, Wilt. It costs 1 and a green to destroy an artifact or enchantment, but it also has the option to cycle it for 2 mana in case your opponent doesn't have an artifact or enchantment based deck. It's better than Naturalized due to the cycling option, and it should see a moderate amount of play in a normal green deck. Next up, it's red. Heightened Reflexes is an instant for a single red mana new to Ikoria. It gives a target creature +1/+0 until end of turn, and that permanent gets a first strike counter on it. I think first strike is very underrated, and this card will definitely take a few people by surprise when their creatures die from what seemed like an obvious block thanks to this card. On a similar vein of underrated cards, I think Forbidden Friendship has been very handy to me on Arena. For 1 and a red, you get 2 1/1 tokens, one of them being a red dinosaur with haste and the other one a 1/1 white human soldier. In standard games where value is everything, getting 2 creatures for 2 mana from 1 card is pretty good, especially when one of them has haste, and that just sweetens the deal. And finally in red is a card already overtaking Shock and Skewer the Critics in red burn decks, Fire Prophecy. It deals 3 damage to a target creature with the added option of putting a card from your hand to the bottom of the deck and drawing a card. For the same casting cost as Dry's Greeting, you can rotate a card which you may not need to the bottom of your library and get a fresh card instead. There's only one blue common card I really like the look of, that being Keep Safe. It's an instant costing 1 and a blue that counters a spell that targets a permanent you control and draws you a card. It's essentially a turn aside that allows you to draw a card for an extra mana, and is the only card in standard that has this type of effect, so it should be pretty popular, especially with the amount of Capture Sphere I've seen so far. Light of Hope is incredibly cheap at a single white mana, and for that price you get a choice of options at instant speed. You either gain 4 life, destroy a target enchantment, or put a 1/1 counter on target creature. This card won't see that much play as it's only good in specific decks, but the first 2 options to destroy an enchantment or gain life will be pretty useful. Finally, the commons is what will be easily a new colourless staple, especially in EDH Farfinder. It's a 1/1 fox for 3 mana that has vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, you search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it in your hand and shuffle your library. It's a pretty decent mana ramp with the added benefit of a 1/1 vigilance. It's not as good as some other staples like Cultivate or Kodama's Reach, and is very similar to District Guide, but it's usable in every deck as it's colourless. Despite all the green commons that I really like the look of, there's only one uncommon I like, Auspicious Starix. It's another mutate creature, a 6/6 elk beast for 4 and a green, with a mutate cost of 5 and a green. When this creature mutates, exile the top card from your library until you exile X permanents, where X is the number of times this creature has mutated. Put those permanents onto the battlefield. This card requires quite a bit of time to come into its own, but if it manages to survive a couple of mutates, it can get ridiculous as you get a bunch of free cards on the battlefield. Blue has some tasty uncommons new to Ikoria. Firstly, Archipelago is a 7/7 Leviathan for 5 and 2 blue, or a mutate cost of 5 and a blue. When it mutates, tap up to X target creatures, where X is the number of times this creature has mutated. Those creatures don't untap during their controller's next untap step. I've already lost to this so many times. It's a pure game winner if not dealt with early, and it leaves you with no blockers like an occurring Frostlinks, which it can mutate onto for an even better effect. Ominous Seas is another card which I think can provide game winning creatures. It's an enchantment for 1 and a blue. It gets a foreshadow counter on it every time you draw a card, and you can remove 8 foreshadow counters from it to create an 8/8 Kraken, and it also has a cycling option for 2 mana. It is a must add in any deck involving any kind of draw power. Even without draw based cards, you get a huge 8/8 Kraken in 8 turns just through your normal draws. And lastly, for the blue uncommons, it's Pouncing Shore Shark, a 4/3 shark beast costing 4 and a blue, or 3 and a blue with its mutate cost. It has flash, and whenever it mutates, you return a target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. It's unsummon attached to a shark. What's not to love? In black, they have a good mix of cards, some that will be good in every deck and some that will be good in classic life gain drain decks. For the latter, one of the new cards is Bastion of Remembrance. It's an enchantment for 2 and a black. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Then, whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. It's Cruel Celebrant that comes in with a token for an extra mana and will be a must-have in most mono black or Ozov decks. Speaking of life gain drain decks, Insatiable Hemophage will often be included too. It's a 3/3 nightmare with Death Touch for 3 and a black, or you can mutate it for 2 and a black. When it mutates, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of times this creature has mutated. With a similar effect to Gary, it's a threatening card that can end games with enough mutating, and the fact it has Death Touch makes it that much harder to remove. The next card should be used in most black decks, especially ones focusing on lower CMC costs. Call of the Death Dweller is a sorcery for 2 and a black that returns up to 2 target creatures with a total CMC of 3 or less from your graveyard to your battlefield. Put a Death Touch counter on either of them, then put a Menace counter on either of them. Not only can it bring up to 2 creatures back to the battlefield, it gives one of them Death Touch and then either the same one or the other one Menace. 2 of the most annoying and powerful abilities. Finally, in the black uncommons is Heartless Act. This instant costs 1 and a black and gives you the option to either destroy a target creature with no counters on it, or remove up to 3 counters from a target creature. Even if it was just the first choice to destroy a creature with no counters on it, it'd be worth it, but with the added option of removing counters from a creature is perfect for the new counters in Ikoria. This will be one of the main removal spells used in quite a lot of formats. Fight as 1 is the only white uncommon I'm fond of. It's a 1 white instant that gives target human and or target non-human you control +1/1 and indestructible until end of turn. For only 1 mana, you can give 2 creatures temporary indestructibility, which is double the value of Sheltering Light from Ixalan. Finally, we have the multicolour uncommons. First up is Sprite Dragon, which is a 1/1 fairy dragon costing a red and a blue. It has flying and haste, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a 1/1 counter on Sprite Dragon. This is an absolute staple in Izzet Spellslinger decks, and it has their 2 favourite abilities, flying and haste, and it gets stronger every turn because you're guaranteed to cast a non-creature spell basically every turn. On the Simic side, there's Trumpeting Gnar. It's a 3/3 beast for 1 blue and a green, or the alternate mutate cost of 3 blue-green, blue-green. Whenever this creature mutates, create a 3/3 beast creature token. Getting a free creature for every mutate is pretty good value, especially when that 3/3 beast can be mutated on itself. Next up is Primal Empathy, a card that will be heavily used in Simic counter decks and big creature decks as it has benefits of both. At the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card if you control a creature with the greatest power among creatures on the battlefield. Otherwise, put a 1/1 counter on a creature you control. For the big creature side, you get a free card every turn, and for the counter side, you get a free 1/1 counter every turn. Pretty much a win-win. And lastly, but no means least, we have one of my favourite uncommons, not just from Ikoria, but possibly ever. This card is Proud Wild Wander. It's a 4/3 human warrior for 2 red or green with trample, and its ability gives creatures you control with trample can assign their combat damage as if they weren't blocked. Despite it being very specific to Gruul trample decks, when I've played this on Arena, I've had a ridiculous amount of fun if I'm not being erased by a black deck. It works stupidly well with Quartz Crasher from the same set, as the dinosaur tokens produced are even bigger. But the fact that trample creatures basically just go straight through means it's tough luck for your opponents. So yeah, that's my choice of my favourite common and uncommon cards from the new Ikoria set. Let me know of any cards that I didn't mention that you think deserve to be on this list, or any cards on the list that you think I'm hyping up too much. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.